Hey everybody, it's Glenn from Third Millennium. We had a bunch of requests come in to our YouTube channel and also to our regular website from some owners that are really doing a lot of audio work on their cars, and they wanted some help with some soldering. Now, all of our speakers come with the harness adapters on them, so they just plug into the existing harness, but a lot of people doing some custom work, doing some restoration, putting some things back the way they were in the car. So this video is going to take 5 minutes, show you, even if you've never done any soldering before, we're going to show you how to make a perfect solder connection every single time. Absolutely guaranteed, can't fail. And to make it a little bit easier, we're going to use a really inexpensive soldering iron. We've started carrying this soldering iron on our website. It's Chinese-made iron, and it's a 40 watt, which is a little bit high for a lot of electronics work. There's a reason for that, though. That's so that if you're using it outside where there's a little bit of wind, it'll still work. What it is that makes this useful as a very occasional soldering tool is the tip on this is actually clad with iron. That's really important, because if you get a cheap one that's just copper or steel or something like that, you use it 5 or 6 times and the tip will disintegrate. So you want to get one that's actually iron. So instead of using, I'm at one of our workbenches here, instead of using a good temperature controlled welder iron like this that we use for some of our own work, I'm going to use this cheap soldering iron. By the way, we have this and a bundle of 6040 solder, which is the correct type of solder for a lot of electronic work, available on our website for I believe it's $12 at the time of this video. And so if you don't actually have anything and you're just looking for something for some occasional use, this will be the way to go. One word about solder. If you don't know this, traditional electronic solder is a combination of tin and lead, 60-40, 60% tin, 40% lead. Obviously, working with lead is a problem. Lead is a hazard. Don't want to have kids, of course, be handling any of this. My personal recommendation is making sure you're always using this in a well-ventilated location, and wash your hands when you get done. If you're going to be working with this all the time on a regular basis, you'd want some additional precautions like we have here, where we have ventilating fans and some other things. But I'm assuming most people are going to be doing this once or twice a year on their car out in the yard, so that's where we're going to proceed. So warnings printed right on the package for this solder, but this is the correct solder, and also a nice gauge and a little roll tube you can throw into your toolkit. So this and the iron for $12 probably last most people the rest of their lives. So I'll leave a link down below if you're interested in that. So I'm going to move the camera, get zoomed right in so you guys can see really well, and we'll get to it. All right, we're here on the bench. I've got a piece of wire. This is, I think this is some 20 gauge. First thing you have to know about soldering is, in order for the solder to adhere to the wire has to be perfectly clean. If your wire isn't clean, if you're working on some old wire, it's got a lot of corrosion, it's been out in the weather, there's green salts, all over the stuff, go back, look at our other video. I'll leave a link for that one also in the bottom, on how to actually clean old wire so that it's perfectly clean and ready to solder. So I'm going to assume that your wire's in good shape. This is a brand new piece of wire here, and we're going to do two things. First, I'm going to show you how to solder wire to wire. Then I'm going to show you how to solder some wire onto a terminal, like onto this speaker that I have here. All right, I got two pieces of wire here. I've cleaned off, stripped off the insulation, about a 1/2 inch on each one. It's actually a little bit more than you need, but that's okay. And first thing we got to do is we got to get our soldering iron ready. Now, soldering iron, in order for it to conduct the heat efficiently, it needs to have a clean surface, and just by the virtue of sitting and the rosin that is in the soldering iron in the solder, it will build up a bunch of junk onto the tip that you got to clean it off, and you have to do what's called tinning the soldering iron. Tinning the soldering iron means applying a thin coat of solder to the soldering iron, that liquid lead tin of the solder will be what transfers the heat to the wire that you actually want. Now, we have some tools here for doing, proper tinning and taking care of the tips. You guys aren't going to have that stuff. Just get a plain old paper towel, get a little bit of water, just put a drop or two on there. When you put the water on, it helps to clean the tip, but it is going to cool it, okay? And you'll see that the tip, if I could get it so that you could actually get a close-up of it, you would see it gets shiny, and then from the heat, almost immediately starts turning back to a sort of a dull color as the surface cooks. So you want to take that nice clean surface, put a little bit of solder onto it, just so that it's going to conduct well onto the wire. Then you're going to take that surface, and you're not going to have the wires fastened together. You're just going to work on one wire. What we're going to do is we're going to apply the solder, and I'm going to zoom in as much as I can get the camera to do it. We're going to apply the solder to one of the wires at a time, put solder onto that, and I'll show you how we do that, and then when we're done, we're going to solder the two wires together. This is the secret for doing this such that it works perfectly every single time. Let me zoom the camera in and we'll continue along. Okay, that's about as much as I can zoom with this particular camera. So have your wire in place, and I've just got it sitting. You don't want the wire against the part that you're going to be soldering against any surface, because that will conduct the heat away. Now, again, we've got clamps and arms and stuff to hold the wire. You can use a tool out of your toolbox or something like that. Just get the wire so that it's up, and the part that you're going to apply solder to, just the bare wire, is in the air, okay? And the technique that you're going to use is you're going to put your soldering iron that's been cleaned and tinned onto the back behind the wire. You're going to hold it there for a couple of seconds, and that is going to, because of the tinning that you did, this little bit of solder that's on the iron, that is going to conduct the heat into the wire, and then with your solder, you're going to apply your solder to the wire itself, not to the soldering iron, okay? You might have to apply a little bit right at the junction just to get it to start, but once this is hot enough and you apply the solder to it, the solder will actually flow onto the wire. Let's go ahead and do it. And just like that. If you leave it too long, what will happen is you'll start melting the insulation back, and it's mostly PVC. That would be normal, but to whatever extent you can see that, we've actually got the solder to flow through the wire all the way in between the individual copper strands. If you didn't get it to flow all the way, let it cool down. You might need to clean your iron off again. Retin your iron, and then take your retinned iron back to the piece, and apply your solder again. Now, you don't need a big gob hanging off of this. If you leave a big blob on the wire, it isn't hot enough. The wire has not been heated enough. So that's one. Let's go ahead. We'll do the other one the exact same way. Okay, that's it. We now have two pieces of wire that have been tinned. Now, you'll see some videos when some people do all kinds of stuff. They wrap the wire together, they do intricate patterns for twisting it together and knotting it before soldering. There's no reason to be doing any of that. If you're soldering, you do not want to be relying on a soldered connection for strength, like if something is suspended or hanging. this doesn't want to be how you're fastening it. You want to have the strength not from wire. You never use wire for strength. You use wire for just conducting electrical signals. So there is no need to twist the stuff together. The only reason to twist stuff together is as you become more proficient in soldering, is to simply hold the two pieces in the position that you want while you actually do the soldering. But the way I'm showing you how to do it, it's not necessary to do that. We're actually, we've tinned both pieces, and what we're going to do now is we're going to reapply the heat to one of them. We're then going to bring the other one into contact with it. The two, because they're tinned, the solder will flow together and make a perfect connection. So let's go ahead and do that and finish up this connector. I'm going to clean my iron here. Retin it. And this is a two-handle operation. Now obviously if you're holding this is going to get hot if you're holding the one piece up against the other with your hand. It's going to get hot, so just keep in mind that if you keep the iron on here too long, you'll end up burning your fingers. So if you have to, you can clamp and hold the pieces together. Once you get good at this, you'll realize you can make this connection, and as long as your finger's back a couple of inches, it won't be a problem. Let's go ahead. Okay, and that is a perfectly soldered connection. Now, if you look at it, we could have put a tiny bit more solder back into here, maybe up into here, but the point is the solder has flowed completely between the two connections such that this is not going to come apart. It's going to be as strong as the wire. You'd want to then wrap this either with some shrink tape, shrink wrap or something like that, just to make sure that that stays connected. And if you end up, when you pull your soldering iron away, I don't know if you can see it on here, there's a little sharp piece sticking out. Just take a pair of diagonal cutters and just snip that off. Or you can take your soldering iron and just quickly smooth over that one little connection if you'd like. All right, perfect connection. That will work every single time without fail. Now, let's actually show connecting to a terminal. Anyway, we've got one terminal here. I'm trying to get it so you can see the terminal. And the terminal on this, it's kind of interesting. It's just a piece of wire. Okay, all right, there we go. That's a good view. Terminal here is just a piece of wire. Okay, so let's say we've got our wire here and we want to actually solder it directly to that. You can see that a crimp-on terminal isn't going to work here very well. A lot of times when you work with electrical components like this or like a resistor, you'll notice the resistor leads are silvered. They're already pre-tinned. This is the secret of why this works. The electrical industry knows that if the items are pre-tinned and then you go to solder them together, they always go together well. So sometimes you'll find a terminal like this is already pre-tinned. If not, you do the same thing. Simply bring your iron over, have your solder ready, and you just want to get a little bit of solder onto this such that it's ready to accept the pre-tinned lead. Now, I don't have this end lead actually done, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll get this so you guys can see it again. I'm going to pre-tin this one just like we did on the others. I'm going to clean my iron off again. All right, here we go. Okay, perfectly tinned on all sides. Now, this lead is sticking up. I do want to try to match up as much of the surface area as I can. So since this lead is sticking up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this right alongside of it like this. I'm going to apply the heat to the back until I see that they're both melted. I'm going to pull the iron away, hold the wire steady, just to let the solder cool. All right. Yeah, that's a perfect connection. Let me zoom back. I told you that you don't have to rely on knotting things for strength and so forth. Solder, even though it's lead and tin, it is a metal. I mean, this is a strong connection. This speaker probably weighs a couple of pounds. That is not going to vibrate off. That's not going to fall off. Again, you don't want to be using the solder for strength, but it makes a very strong connection when you've soldered it properly. Anyway, hope this has helped you guys doing some soldering. Any questions or comments, leave them below. Give the video a like and follow us. We've got more Miata audio stuff. We're going to do some more general electronics like this that some people have asked us about, and we hope this helps you guys enjoy your Miatas or whatever car or electronic project you're working with. Thanks very much.